delightful audio video person in the back. Thumbs up. Good to go. Hello, welcome. I'm Perez. I'm going to be talking about how Booking.com grows Perl developers. So who am I? Who's the dude with the mohawk in front of you? I am a Perl developer since 2003. That's when my pause account was first came into existence. My claim to fame, according to Sawyer, is that I gave 6 talks at a YAPC once, and that is the most talks anyone has ever given at a YAPC. It was purely by accident. It was one of those, I submitted 6 talks, and I told the organizers, pick one, and they picked all 6. And so I rose to that challenge, and that was a very interesting YAPC that year. It was crazy. I didn't get to enjoy it because I was busy. So there's that. Just to let you know, this is a thinly veiled recruitment pitch. But really, it's useful for other companies that also are in the same boat that we're in, because Booking.com, we're always hiring. You always see we're always at the conferences and the workshops, and we always have a booth and that kind of thing. We'll get into kind of some of those reasons.
All the other companies have to have 200 Perl developers.
Sure, exactly. But it could be useful for smaller companies that can't find enough local Perl talent, for example. But so, anyways, without further ado, first off, why are we even talking about this? It's because we do have issues hiring Perl developers, as evidenced by all of you in this room that don't work for Booking.com. That said, we kind of are the 400-kilogram gorilla in the market. We've tapped all of the markets that we can feasibly tap and get people to come work for us. So we understand that it's not right for everyone to pick up and move across the world and come work with us in Amsterdam. People are settled; they like their lives. It's especially difficult for Americans, and I into a very complicated infrastructure and say, you need to rewrite this subsystem, and you need to do it by next week. That's not a fair thing to do, and we recognize that. So we had to really think about what kind of tasks are appropriate for people that don't know Perl, but are already successful software developers. Which brings me kind of to my next point of, so what is our environment? What is our recipe? And it starts with people. So there are 5 dudes up here. I interviewed them. They are all hackers at Booking.com. And all of them did not know Perl before they came to work for Booking. In the top left-hand corner, I know these are small pictures. I'm sorry. The dude in the white shirt, that's Borislav. He comes from Bulgaria. He was a C programmer doing kernel hacking. He was working at an ISP, and not Linux kernel, BSD kernel. He used Ruby as his secondary language. In fact, even wrote the Ruby serial implementation. If you're not familiar with what serial is, we wrote a better storable. Stefan Mueller, Eve Orton, and those dudes came together and they put together a spec for doing serialization that met our needs better than what storable did, or even better than JSON XS. And so Borislav wrote a Ruby implementation of it, which is actually what got our attention in the first place. And we're like, you should come work for us. He had limited free and open source contributions and involvement before he came. The second guy is Dmitry, mostly Python, Java, and C#, and from an academic background. No Libre software at all. Next, top right-hand corner, Leandro, Java dude, who did his scripting in Ruby. Academic background, PhD in distributed systems and web services. Again, no open source. Bottom left-hand corner, Kaio, Python guy, C, C++, Java. Lots of low-level hacking, embedded systems. His full-time work, he did do open source contributions. And then Emmanuel, our last but not least, a C, C++ guy, Python, Java. He actually worked for an affiliate of ours, a meta hotel search type of thing, so you could compare prices. And then side projects, open source. So the one thing that you'll notice with all of these guys is that they already knew multiple languages. And that kind of plays into it, right? So these are guys that understood that languages were a tool to accomplish a task, to get something done. And so that's kind of the first step into having successful Perl developers that don't know Perl. Bringing them into your organization is to make sure that they are already comfortable with the concept of programming regardless of the language that is being used. So what's the next step once we have found these right people? We give them resources. We require Vespine gas. And so when I interviewed these people and I asked them, what kind of resources did you have available to you when you onboarded? You know, who onboarded you? What did that process look like? Again, this was an evolving project, an experiment that we were doing of hiring these people that didn't know Perl. Borislav stated that what he found the most useful was our very large code base. We've got like 3 million lines of Perl in our main repository, both good and bad, written by both good and bad programmers. And that gave him, do what? I thought I heard somebody. It gave him an opportunity. Yeah, okay. It gave him an opportunity to basically look at the idioms in practice, and then also follow up with the authors that wrote that code and look at the other code that they wrote, and to get a feel for how they write Perl and what you know. He tried to make sense of everything. We also make sure that our devs can connect with one another easily, both in person and other channels. So Dmitry, Emmanuel, and Kaio all took advantage of more senior developers that knew Perl, that were basically able to answer their questions about the silliest of things. Everything from sigils to why would you want a 3-argument open instead of a 2-argument open. And those types of things, very, very important. We have a culture of communication at Booking. So one of the things that a lot of people have a love-hate relationship is our open floor plan in the office. So no cube farm, no offices. But it's definitely loud. And it can be noisy, so it can be a little difficult to concentrate. You see a lot of people with headphones. At the same time, you can walk up to somebody, tap them on the shoulder, and say, "Hey, I have a question. Can you help me?" And they'll be more than happy to. You know, they might be a little frustrated, and you just interrupted their flow, and you know, they have to take off their headphones. But we've found that having that kind of open communication really, really helps in this process. You want to be able to have people to talk face to face if they don't know Perl, and allow them to ask questions. The other thing that we do is Eve Orton actually has a wiki page called like Traps and Zaps of Perl. And there's a couple of other pages like that we just document the little things that we've seen in the code base that either look strange, or there's been problems in the past, or some of the more stranger idioms in Perl that we end up using, we talk about. For example, we have eval. We have a common idiom of how we use eval in our code base, where we always return a true value at the end of the block. And then we use an or die. In other words, if we don't return a true value. This avoids a lot of complication around dealing with $@ and localizing and making sure that you don't override it and destructors and blah, 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 blah. But we prefer to use that idiom over something like compared to try tiny, because try tiny is slow. We can talk about that afterwards if you don't believe me. So we make use of a wiki, even though wikis are where information goes to die. We do make use of our wikis to make sure that some of this information is disseminated and written down so that people that come after us know what we're talking about. So the other thing that's part of this recipe is that we give them meaningful work. We don't have them doing things that would be beneath them or below them in terms of not respecting their experience that they came in. There's a whole reason why we hired them. Sharp people. We want to tap that. We want to use that even right off the bat. So prime example. Borislav was given a bug in our web services code to fix. It took him a couple of days of actually reading the code to figure out that he was racking his brains. He couldn't find where it was, and then he started looking in the Perl documentation and figured out that he could override bless in the core namespace, and did so and actually traced down where the bug was. But it was one of those giving him something meaty. This is a real problem. Go solve, find. Dimitri, he needed to implement a new or different monitoring based on our anomaly detector. That's cleverly named our DDoS detector. So we had a huge DDoS event, I guess 2 years ago now. Where we had like hours of downtime, which was very, very costly. Actually, Eve Orton, that name will come up very frequently, put the code in to basically figure out anomalies in our traffic patterns, the number of events, the number of page views, exceptions, everything. We have a big monitoring culture at Booking, and this was basically the next step of second level monitoring, not like minutely, but secondly, to analyze various rises and dips in all of our normal traffic and behavior for our customers. Dimitri used that as a basis to basically implement a different monitor that we needed. Leandro needed to produce reporting on our top 1,000 locations. So we have a team specifically that takes a look at what our visitors are doing in aggregate and try and figure out what is it that we can give them to make them better customers, to make them more loyal, to actually give them a service that they want by basically doing data analysis. So that's very important on what Leandro was working on. Emmanuel is giving. We have a system for pre-materializing all of the hotels that we want to sell in our system. Like we have a big cluster. It's called flat AV or flat availability. If this system goes down, so does the site. Like it just doesn't work. We make zero money. So Emmanuel was actually tasked with working on that system from day one. So there's, and that that can be dire consequences. Can you imagine, you know, in your company handing the keys to the kingdom to the new guy that even doesn't even know the language that your system is written in? That's a risk. But we have ways to actually mitigate that risk, and we also want to give our developers the opportunity to learn, and we do that by making mistakes. Mistakes are very, very important for learning. We need to make sure that our new guys can absolutely make mistakes. We've built systems to allow us to recover quickly if something does go wrong. We can actually roll out the main website in about 12 minutes right now. And we do that multiple times a day. But the bonus to being able to do that is that if something goes wrong with the site, we can roll back very quickly, even faster than the 12 minutes if we decided to. And we're actually even working to shrink that time down to more like 2 minutes because we recognize that it's a bottleneck to our innovation. But the thing is that within your first week at Booking, all of these gentlemen deployed code to production systems, barely understanding Perl.
On their first day.
Some on their first day, absolutely. Because again, we want to get them, we want to integrate them, we want to introduce them to our way of working and our culture and to Perl all at the same time. And we have seatbelts in place to make sure that they don't end up hurting themselves when they crash the car. After interviewing all of them and asking them, so when did you feel that you were a proficient Perl user? Maybe you didn't know all of the argument order for substring. You could go look it up, but you felt proficient. And all of them said in about a month, sometimes a little bit less. They felt proficient in Perl and they were productive. And then I asked them also, so when did you feel like you became an advanced user? Not necessarily that you understand and you could, describe illustrated Perl guts, for example, but be an advanced user to, create modules and, understand ISA and, all of the ins and outs of some of the special variables and that kind of stuff. And basically from 6 months to a year, they felt that they had an advanced understanding of Perl in that context. And then after talking with them, I wanted to ask them, so if there were things that you could tell me about, coming into this environment and learning Perl, what are your opinions on what's good and what's bad in Perl compared to your previous experience in all of your various languages and industries that you came from before you came to us? So they started with good stuff. Borislav really enjoyed the hackability. He liked XS, unlike most normal people. He enjoyed the ref counting. It's one of those not having to manage the memory by hand. You have to remember he was coming from a C background. That and internally everything is a hash, so like stashes and whatnot. He found that that fit his mental model. Some of the other guys talked about the idioms that made the language expressive. Map and grep, for example. It makes it very compact to be able to do iteration over a list of something and to filter it accordingly. They also like the speed of development. There was, and it all comes down to CPAN, really. The language itself is, people will argue, would be CPAN, not just Perl. Also, they enjoyed the first-class data structures, being able to have hashes and arrays. So like the guys that came from the Java and the C# of the world, if you want to hash, you're like, oh, I'm going to instantiate this hash map object, and then you have to go through all this boilerplate to add the keys and values to it and do all of this stuff, and it lines and lines and lines of code for something that's very, very simple to do in Perl. And all of them said it was the expressiveness of the language that they enjoyed the most. So what were the bad things? because all of those are good. That's good. But something that can help us to improve is definitely the bad things. Context was one of the ones that confused all of them. The whole, is this list context? Is it scalar context? Bless, the way that Perl 5 does object orientation. Bless was kind of a weird foreign concept. Borslav especially didn't like multiple false values. He's coming from a C world. He wants 1 or 0 kind of thing. 0 is false. Optional syntax. You can construct a hash without fat commas, and that's weird. There's other cases where you can obviously leave off parentheses if you have the right prototype on your subroutine. So that kind of optional syntax they found very confusing. Sigils. Why bother with sigils? Like you know that that's a hash, or you know that that's an array, because of how you use it. The other thing that someone, I think it was Emmanuel who complained was, what took so long for method signatures? Like everything else has it. Why can't Perl have it? And a lot of people were uncomfortable with there's more than one way to do it. Especially the guys that came from a Python background, where Python is very much, no, this is the one way, the one true way. And then a couple of concerns that came up with performance too. Now we squeeze quite a bit of performance out of Perl if you do things right. If you don't do the more complicated things like nesting, map and map and map and grep and map and all of that, and building all of those anonymous lists in between each and all of that stuff. Do a single iteration instead of multiple iterations. For a naive Perl programmer, all of that looks really cool, but then when you go and run it, it's not very fast. So performance was a concern. Then last, I asked them, would they consider using Perl for future projects once they left Booking? And I got a mixed result. So we have like Borslav, who said that he has a very pragmatic mindset, that he would absolutely consider it. It would be in his toolbox for future projects. And I consider that a success. Like we have introduced someone into the Perl community. Someone who hacks on Perl and considers it a tool in his toolbox. Then like Dimitri was like, I would use it, but if it was in a case that performance wasn't highly rated, like if he didn't need to be super fast. And then the abso-fucking-lutely knots. I think that was the Kaio. Very much a staunch Python guy, and he has nice long rants. If you would like to read them, I'll be more than happy to share them with you. So out of 5 guys, only 1 guy said no, I would never use Perl. And to me, that's positive. That's really good. But I feel like if we could just convince Kaio, or if maybe there was something that we could do better, then maybe we could introduce more people into Perl, and then also make our business better as well. So, kind of my last point. I know we're constantly recruiting, and that it's mostly because of a quirk of our market, being in the right place at the right time and making the right calls. And I know a lot of you have reservations of working for us, or moving to Amsterdam.
You're about reservations.
Well, yes. I'm glad you caught that. There's a parentheses, ha, in my slide talk. And then, and that's okay. Like, really, I get that. But necessity is the mother of invention. So we had to get creative, and we had to do something different. And I think it really paid off for us to bring in people that didn't know Perl. And so I encourage you to take this message back to your managers and to your bosses and to your company owners to say, hey, that Perl position that we haven't been able to fill, what if we opened it up? Instead of just putting it on jobs.perl.org, what if we went and talked to guys in the Python group, the user group that meets next door, What about the .NET guys that meet, across town? And basically bring them into the fold, and you might be delightfully surprised. And of course, it will be different for everyone in their company on how they grow their own Perl developers. But I really hope that this kind of a little bit of an insight on how we do it and why we're successful. Well, maybe we don't know quite why, but we think we've figured out the how. That maybe you can do the same thing too, and then we end up with a hell of a lot more people here at YAPC. So let's bring more people into Perl. Any questions? Yes, sir. When he has a question, he'll say, who do I talk to about this, or what? I need information on this subsystem. And I'm like, okay, well then you need to go talk to so and so. Okay, well, what's their email address? And I was like, no, come on, let's get up and let's just walk over. And then so that's especially for the people that are doing onboarding and our team leads in our group. Going through our team lead training, actually, we have a list of about 100 different things. And the exercise is to put someone's name next to that thing, and you can only use the same name twice for that particular subsystem or that kind of question that you would ask. So it's very important. Communication is extremely important. We want to build your network, social network, internally inside the department so that you know who to go and talk to when you have questions. And so in that case, the easiest way to get someone out of that mindset of, well, I'll just send an email, is to say, come with me. Let's go physically make this introduction. This is this person. You can put a name to this face, and you can actually collaborate and get things done. And at the end of the day, we're really all about getting things done. And communication, the way that we do communication is effective in accomplishing that, and not having the bouncing back and forth with emails. Especially since we're a very international culture. Like, we have 57 different nationalities in the department. English is not everyone's first language. So you lose the subtleties in verbal communication when English is your second language and you're typing it up in an email. For us, it's always better to go and talk to someone in person, and we try and beat that into our new guys' heads so that they get the point that this is what we absolutely need to do. Any other questions? Oh, lots of questions. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So these 5 people, how many people total have you onboarded that don't know Perl?
I should have looked at that statistic before I came. I would say it's rare now that we hire an actual Perl developer.
Yeah, I recently talked to Marco about this.
Yeah.
He does the onboarding.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, the hiring.
Yep.
The current ratio of non-Perl developers versus Perl developers is 2 to 1. So for every Perl developer, we hire 2 non-Perl developers.
Yep.
So what I was wondering was if you're noticing correlation between their main language before they come and their uptake on Perl. Like whether or not C guys get it better than Python guys get it better than Ruby guys.
So the guys that come from dynamic languages, they have a leg up. So when I interviewed them, I also asked them what kind of idioms transferred well from your primary language. And they would describe things like Python list comprehensions make real sense compared to maps and greps. Being able to map those ideas back and forth between dynamic languages makes a lot of sense, especially considering that Perl was the precursor to a lot of these other languages. So I think the dynamic guys have a leg up. The C guys, they can operate in Perl just fine. Thank you, Larry.
We're trying to fix that.
The Java and the C# guys have kind of the biggest issues, and a lot of it is that it doesn't feel safe because there's not a lot of verbosity, right? So it's like this little statement does the same thing as this big statement. So that would be my impression of that. They're in the back.
So when you bring people in and you tell them that you're going to have questions, you're going to have all that stuff, but usually I'm guessing you have to give them something to get that like first toehold in the language. Do you have like a a class? Do you recommend books? Do you handle the book? Do you just say,
So we do have a library in the office. If people, because usually the lead time from when someone is hired to when they actually start is a couple of months because of immigration and moving and relocation, all that stuff. We recommend, hey, maybe you should go grab the llama book, or maybe, and just give it a once over before you actually land in the office. And I find that helps. But again, mostly with these non-Perl guys, they're polyglots already. So they're used to picking up languages or understanding other languages and mapping to their own mental model. Once they're in the office, though, then it's mostly the Perl doc and talking to people.
A few weeks ago, in our team, we had someone starting who was not Perl developer, and at the first stand-up we asked, well, where's the documentation? And we just had to point to the source code.
Yeah.
And that's how many of them just learn.
Sure.
Here's the source code.
Yeah. I mean, when you've got 3 million lines of code, I mean, you can pretty much grep for anything that you might be interested in, and see how that particular function or syntax or whatever is used. Yes, sir.
Back to the interruption and flow question. So
yeah.
I was recently reading Ovid's blog, and he had a thing about why people don't hire him sometimes as a remote employee. They want people on site so they can bug them, and he made an argument that that flow thing is really important.
Sure.
People don't understand that when you interrupt someone, you can cost them an extra 15 minutes on top of
sure.
the interruption. But you found it not necessarily an issue? Or?
So the one like Chris Vainbor's teams, they have a library hours in their area, a couple of hours in the afternoon where
that was an experiment.
Did it not work out? Okay, that was
after 2 weeks they stopped it.
Okay. Well, we've tried different things to make that effective. A lot of it is just headphones. People with headphones and instant messaging helps a lot. If you need just a quick snippet of information rather than like full on bug somebody. So there's that to it. Sometimes it's just a little more complicated than that, and you have to go and talk to somebody. We try and do most of our annoying interruption type things in the morning. So that's like when our daily stand-ups are. People get into the office and get coffee and they chat and they do all of that stuff. Most people don't really get into the flow until like mid-afternoon, after lunch, and people tend to respect that. So we find the morning tends to be fairly noisy. Early afternoon it gets quiet, and then late afternoon it gets noisy again because people are leaving the office. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So when you started at the beginning of your talk, you talked about not giving people something that was too much for them to chew. For example, Perl. But then your actual examples were all things that were extremely critical.
Sure.
So how do you actually pick what the right project is?
A lot of it comes from their background. Like it's so like I said before, we want to tap their experience. That's why we hired them. Like we don't hire junior developers. That's the one thing that we absolutely don't compromise on, unless they're also talented and they also have like extensive open source work. Something to actually demonstrate that they're capable of operating at the level that we need them to operate at. We treat them as professionals. We expect you to communicate. We have like 3 critical areas that we use to basically gauge a candidate for whether they're a good fit, and that comes down to craftsmanship, like can you actually cut code, communication, can you actually tell us and talk to us and either exchange information in a meaningful way, and commercial awareness. Primarily what we're doing at Booking is product development. We're not taking specifications and turning them into code. We're helping shape the specifications. Knowing what those knowing the 3 C's, as we like to call them, that's obnoxious, but it's very poignant because those are the criteria we use for getting developers. We also look at 4 years of experience. We think 4 years is about the right threshold that you will have had, hopefully, a diverse exposure to either different languages, different industries, different types of systems, different technology. And we feel that kind of gives us a good baseline for saying that you're ready to operate at the level that we need you to. So, does that answer your question? All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I was told that this year's Perl QA hackathon in Lyon was held at Booking.com offices. So I'm wondering, do you have additional locations besides Amsterdam? And do you have any expectation of opening offices in the Western Hemisphere?
So development is all centered in Amsterdam, but we do have local offices for basically our accommodations relations. So the people that actually talk to hotels. And there are 130 of those.
There are 2 here in Orlando.
Right.
We have basically a sales office so that they talk to hotels here, and we have a call center in Orlando.
Yeah, for customer service.
Yes, all development happens.
Yeah, all development happens in Amsterdam. We're not quite to the size yet that it would make sense to open a North American office. I know we've joked about it a little bit, especially a couple of us Americans. Oh yeah, let's open an office, in Vancouver. Or somewhere maybe in Mexico, or I don't know.
Actually, we have a developer in Mexico.
We have a developer in Mexico. That is true, and then we like to pluck the Canadians out and bring them over to Amsterdam. But for the near future, no development office, no secondary development office, and it would likely be the need would be there once we have something distinct enough from the main product. That they can work independently. And we're not quite to that point yet.
This comes back to the communication.
Yeah. We already have issues with people with a huge time difference. We just aren't as effective without the communication. And that would be something that they would have to be independent, and we would have to sync up and figure something else out. We already have that problem with the sister companies as well. So I recently collaborated with a project with one of our sister companies, and they're in Singapore. So they're a bunch of hours ahead of us. So we had a very narrow window of time in the morning, which is our busy time for communicating and figure out what we're going to do for the day. And they're basically in their afternoon, already in the flow of things. And so we had issues, coordinating the project at that point. So
we also had recently that we grew so much in the development department that we had to split over 2 floors. And that was already noticeable in the communication.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir.
So you talk about how many people you're onboarding. Can you give us a little idea of how many that is roughly, like per month or per year, and then what the turnover, what the average developer lifetime in your cycle is?
Okay. So we try and hire.
Target for this year is 85.
Yeah.
And for next year is 100.
Right, and so divide that by 12, and that gives you a rough estimate. Now, sometimes they bunch up a little bit, and we'll have one month where like 20 dudes will land, and then that's kind of hectic. In other months, it's a little thin, so more like 4 to 8 or something like that. Attrition is actually very low. It's 1-2%, something goofy like that.
It's extremely low.
Yeah, and generally when we have developers leave, it's not because we fire them, but because they want to go home. So that's something that we're actually actively working on, like a partners program. A lot of it is we bring people over with a spouse that is unhappy because that it's difficult for them to integrate. So we're actually making sure that they can integrate, giving them a social circle and giving them opportunities for employment, both at Booking and helping them with their resume if they don't want to work at Booking and they will work somewhere else. In the Netherlands, partners that come into the country with highly skilled migrants have less restrictions. They can go work wherever they want. But it's a little difficult when you don't speak Dutch. So we actually even offer Dutch classes to make sure that if you want to integrate, you absolutely can. So that's kind of, does that kind of answer your question? Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I guess we have about, 10 minutes or so? 9 minutes? Anybody else? No?
Well, do you try to capture, I'm sorry, Do you try to capture your institutional learning in some way other than the code base? You know, wikis where information goes to die. Do you have something other than a wiki, some other way of...
It's mostly tribal knowledge. So we actually have a little bit of process in place that most team members live in a team 6 to 18 months. And then we will actually ask you if you're interested in doing something else and strongly suggest that perhaps you should go hang out at this other team. And so by rotating people in and out of teams, we build a body of knowledge that's tribal. But it allows us, especially if a subsystem has an issue on a weekend or whatever, that we have enough developers that know how that subsystem works that they can troubleshoot it. So by making sure that we stick to the 6 to 18 month rule, not only do we make sure that people don't get bored and then decide to leave because they're bored or they feel stuck, that they also take knowledge with them. That they're an expert in one domain. Now let's be an expert in another.
You mentioned you hire a lot of senior developers in other languages.
Yes.
Is it hard to convince somebody who's a senior developer to go to a language where they're not particularly senior? It seems like it would be intimidating to most people.
It kind of depends, right? So a lot of our hiring is subject to global events. Russia deciding to annex some of Ukraine, for example. So we had a large influx of Ukrainians that didn't want to be over there. Right. So there's a little bit of that. Sometimes people, they are senior in one language, but they want to do something else. They're sick of it. And so that's hard to find a business that would be willing to say, you don't know our language, that's fine, come and learn it. Come and learn it on our dime. So it's an opportunity for a lot of people to be able to come see us. Now that said, it's still very narrow. You're absolutely right.
But it's also that it's not really about Perl. We are just a company that basically sells our reservations, and Perl is just one of the tools along with other technology.
Oh yeah. And the thing is that while Perl is 99.9% of what we do, we still have Hadoop, which is in Java if you want to extend it. We're using Elasticsearch, which is also Java. If you want to extend it, you have to do it in Java.
We've got a version of Perl runs on JVM now.
Really? Well, I know Worthington has been working on getting like Perl 6 running, Rakudo running on JVM. I was following that for. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Talk more about your eval boilerplate and how much faster is it than TriTiny?
Aha! Okay, so TriTiny, the way that it works is basically Tri itself takes code blocks because of the prototype, and it has to execute those. Subroutine execution in Perl 5 is slow because it has to do all of the stack manipulation, it has to set up the context, it has to do all of that stuff. And now you're executing like 2 subroutines, and then if there's an if there's an exception, then you have to basically go into the second block and all of that stuff. When you do an eval, you don't have that massive amount of setup to be able to execute a subroutine. It's just by nature of how eval works. I can show you what the idiom is if I can get out of like a terminal open. I don't know if I can. Notepad. See, and I'm not a Windows guy. I just happen to have it on the laptop to play games, and I have a VM.
That's fine.
But anyways, I can show you. But basically, it's eval open brace, put stuff in 1 semicolon close brace, or die, and then another block that happens afterwards, or do whatever.
Or do and then
yeah, some other type of thing, to be able to close handles or whatever. And then what we can do then is assign $@ to a lexical inside of that block, and then if for whatever reason if $@ doesn't have anything, then we can logical or zombie error or something, like we didn't capture whatever it was. So at least we have some kind of text that, hey, this weird condition was met, and then we can report on it or do whatever with it. Okay. So we find that idiom much better and faster than using try-tiny.
Okay. You're not doing anything fancy, exception objects, or? Okay.
Nope.
So what about moves, mouse, any of those? 'Cause
Yes.
I find that helps people grasp the object already a little quicker.
Sure. So for the new guys, it depends on where they land and what part of the code base that they're working on. Like if you land in our search team, for example, all of that stuff is moose. And some of it can be a little confusing just because it's a little action at a distance. But it's still action at a distance that you can look at the source and kind of figure out, oh, this is what has does, you know, and oh, this is what a type constraint does underneath the hood. Right, that kind of thing. So there's that aspect of it. And then the teams where people don't land on and then there's no moose, then they're going to be exposed to it one way or the other, just by virtue of looking at Stack Overflow or you know, looking at other documentation for other modules that are written using moose.
So I can see that being one of the things that they would, in their post-interview, they would say, this is one thing I didn't like, right?
Yeah, and you know what? No one mentioned that. But then again, I could have just not asked the right question.
We have a lot of bare bones pro code.
Yeah.
But we also don't have any coding standards where there's nothing that's saying, well, this is the way how it should be done. So there's a lot of code is the way it is because the person who originally wrote it did it in that way.
Yeah, Abigail has a funky syntax for how he does things. And so you can literally open any file and go, oh, yeah, Abigail's been here. But generally the convention, so we have no conventions except for a guideline of if you open a file and it does things a certain way, follow that way. Don't introduce confusion. Don't go and redo. Don't do white space commits. Don't, you know, just be a grown-up, read the code and play along, you know, and
refactoring is a naughty word.
It's a naughty word because refactoring without reason is a waste of time, and it ends up wasting money in a lot of cases, and you end up introducing bugs.
Refactoring with a reason never works anyways.
Right. So in that particular case, like sometimes we have subsystems that just don't scale. And it's like, well, we can either sink a bunch of time into the system to try and make it scale, or we can just write a new one. And in a lot of cases, we end up writing new subsystems to solve problems that we have and implement the same functionality. We then run into potential second system syndrome, which we also have to be very careful in how we do it. So simple is always better.
You don't have tests?
We have a culture of monitoring rather than doing testing.
That's why refactoring is pretty.
Well, there's part of it, right? Some of it too is the way that we work on our front end. We do a lot of experimentation. We can have hundreds of experiments running at the same time on the main website. If we were to write tests for all of those experiments, the majority of which would fail because we're experimenting. You know, the failure in the context of it doesn't make us any more money, or our customers don't like it, or whatever. If we wrote tests for all of that, then we're throwing away all of that code. We spent twice the amount of time for that one little feature that ultimately we threw it away. So there's that aspect of it. We do have tests in a lot of our web services, subsystems, etc., where it makes sense to do so. And also obviously we use a lot of CPAN, and if we're putting modules on CPAN, it better be damn well tested.
Stuff that we know.
Exactly.
So what you're trying to evolve is a more Darwinian approach.
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's basically, we know that there is value in having tests, but we also know that there is cost in making tests. So each time you have to decide, are the costs worth the benefits? And sometimes the answer is no.
Yep, I'm getting they're going to take a hook and drag me off the stage now. So thank you very much. If you have any other questions, you can come find me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you at length. We have a table over there. Come get some information if you want to come work for us, or if you know somebody that wants to work for us, and I would greatly appreciate that. So thank you very much.